everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be dialing in from around the world. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, A New Biometric That Fraudsters Hate and Users Love, presented by IT Novarica Group and Incognia. I'm Caitlin Labby, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We'll be starting the webinar shortly, but first, let me just cover a few quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded, and a link to view the recording on demand will be available after the session. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions using the questions feature located in the GoToWebinar toolbar to the right of your screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. David Mattei is a strategic advisor in IT Novarica Group's fraud and AML practice. He has over 15 years of experience in the payments industry, designing, building, and launching fraud and dispute systems. Fraud constantly poses financial and reputational risks to parties on both sides of a transaction, and David's customers have included merchants and financial institutions, giving him a unique and comprehensive perspective on these issues. David is joined today by Andre Ferraz. Andre is the CEO and co-founder of Incognia, a location identity company based in Palo Alto, California, that provides mobile authentication to banks, fintech, and mobile commerce. Andre is an expert on location technology and a strong advocate for user privacy. To this date, the location technology developed by Andre and his co-founders have been deployed on more than 200 million smartphones. So, without further ado, I'll turn the mic over now to David for further introductions and to dive into today's content. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy today's webinar. Take it away, David.
Thank you much, Caitlin. Appreciate it. Hey, Andre, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you actually joining me, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, for those who may not know about IT Novarica Group, we are an advisory firm focusing in the financial services industry. I am within the fraud and AML practice out of the money practices that we do have. So I focus specifically on the fraud world, and we do both advisory services and consulting services for our clients. Today, we're going to be talking about location services, and the reason why is because there is certainly a problem that we have out there in the area of account takeover and a lot of the fraud losses associated with this. In the first quarter of this year, we did a study of over 8,500 US consumers, and 16% of them said that they had been a victim of account takeover fraud sometime over the past year. And this is down just a little bit from 2020, and that's mainly just because of all the stimulus funds that were flowing into the economy during the pandemic. Fraudsters were rampant actually in their account takeover fraud that they were doing. And so therefore 2020 was rather a busy year for account takeover. It was good to see that it decreased a little bit in 2021, down to only 16% as opposed to almost 40% actually. But still, it's a problem. And the fact is that these losses associated with account takeover fraud are in billions, upwards of like $8 to $10 billion a year being lost on the basis of ATO fraud. There's another issue that we're actually having with account takeover fraud, and that has to do with the impact that it has in terms of consumers and their confidence they have within their financial institution. In the same survey of first quarter this year of 8,500 US consumers, we found that almost 40%, 36 to be exact, but almost those 30% of the US consumers indicated that they either moved all of their accounts away from their FI or some of their accounts from the FI to another institution because of the fact that their confidence was shaken when it came to the account takeover fraud that they had experienced.